This time on the Plutopia podcast, Jon and Scoop engage in another freeform brain dump. We explore the politics of the moment, cheesy old sci-fi movies, and cutting back on social media.
Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of the Plutopia podcast. The Plutopian News Network is me, John Lebkowski, and my partner in crime here, Scoop Sweeney.
And that's me over here.
We are in Texas. I am in Austin, and Scoop is just outside Austin.
I'm always an outsider. I like to get out here in the hinterlands, wherever that is.
Is that officially Bastrop or is it Elgin?
It's officially Bastrop County because Elgin's north of me. I'm out in the trees in the oak forest.
Fantastic. And we should mention that Austin is often referred to as a city surrounded by Texas because it's not your typical Texas city, even though it is the seat of the fascist Texas government. But we won't get into that right now because we're going to talk about, I think, national politics, among other things. And Scoop, what do you think about political conventions?
It's funny you should ask. I've been tormented by watching the lead up to the two conventions. And over the years, especially when I was covering politics in the Bay Area back in the 70s and 80s, I went to a lot of political conventions, local and national. And they used to be really exciting, and it seems like now they are like royalty is being brought up on stage, and they've already been crowned king of their party, and so there's no drama that used to be. I mean, watching the 1968 Democratic Convention, which turned into a bloodbath for the yippies. It was exciting. We got to watch Dan Rather get punched out by Democratic Party convention goons and police from Chicago. That was exciting to watch. Now it's just like everybody's already lined up. And they know who the king is going to be, and now everyone's just going to march around and utter their praises. And it just seems we've lost something in the political discourse. There's no mystery anymore. You don't know.
Well, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be more democratic, right? They hold primaries and people get to vote. And it used to be that they would select representatives who went to the convention, and at the convention they would hash it out. And there would be this point at the end of the convention where they took a call for votes from each state, and each state would cast its votes according to whatever they had decided during the convention. And it was at the convention that the decision was made about who was going to be the nominee. And I have had to remind people who keep talking about, like they were talking about, should Biden leave the race or not? And they said, well, it's too late for that. It's too late for that. And I too late. Well, he hadn't even been nominated yet. The convention hadn't happened yet. But the thing is that we're so deeply into this primary, the reality of primaries, which are, I'm sure they are more democratic. But the thing about the primaries is that they get everything set up prior to the convention, and we've actually had a debate already, even though we don't have any candidates.
Yeah, and they used to have great floor fights among the people representing the various candidates that were still in the running, and those were exciting. And you learned a lot about where everyone really stood on the issues because they were confronted by their competitors. They had to come up with a good answer. But now it's just, you have the anointed one is being praised by everyone. And it just doesn't seem like the convention is useful anymore. We might as well just have primaries and go on to the election.
An unconventional election.
Yeah, they all are these days. But it was it was a thrill to watch some of those floor fights because you really learned stuff about democracy and about people. The way they deal with each other in a political situation can be very interesting.
Yeah, I used to watch those things, and I would be taking a tally as each state voted. I would be tallying the votes at home just as my little exercise to feel like I was kind of part of the thing that was going on. And of course, I was a young kid back then. And I remember in '68, it was pretty crazy. Everybody thought that Bobby Kennedy was going to be the candidate,
Mhm.
and he was killed,
Yeah, he
as
probably
he was
could have been.
campaigning,
He could have been the candidate, except for
and he could have
intervention by
won.
yeah, intervention by parties unknown. Yeah, that was a big blow, many big blows. Martin Luther King, we lose Bobby Kennedy, and all sorts of other folks in that general time period, and it changed the course of American politics.
It's hard not to envision conspiracy theories around those assassinations. They were political assassinations, and they were pretty much all the same, well, similar political mindsets, those people, and you had them being knocked off one by one. And that includes John Lennon, who was certainly not, he was not really political exactly, but he was sort of, he just didn't believe that we should have wars. And he was involved in peace, protests for peace, or whether they had a bed in, remember? And
Yeah,
where were they? They were in Canada when they did that. They had the bed in, and it was he and Yoko staying in bed and not leaving their bed in the name of peace.
yeah. Early on, he was quite political, I think, because he actually rallied for to get John Sinclair of the Rainbow People's Party in Ann Arbor, get him out of prison, who he was in on marijuana, possession, and John and Yoko and I think it was, I forget which band they brought with you. I think it was like the Plastic Ono band or whatever they were calling it.
Yeah,
He did a big uh, arena concert for Free John Sinclair, and sure enough,
I remember that.
we
Yeah.
got him freed. I got to interview John after he got out, and he was observing that there were political, not really assassinations, but political imprisonments of people. And he mentioned Leotis Johnson down here in Texas, who got 40 years.
Oh yeah, Free Leotis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he passed a joint to a undercover cop, and they figured that was a felony and put him away until we were able to get him out in 1972.
Yeah, and I should mention when I said that John Lennon was not political, I should have said he was not involved in American partisan politics. He advocated for principles and not for candidates.
Yeah, and
I don't think he cared about candidates.
yeah, at the time of his death, he really wasn't political because he decided he wanted to raise his son and be with Yoko and be a real person and not a political animal or a rock and roll animal. So he was in his own world at that point and thinking about coming out of it, and doing more music. But basically, when he died, he was just a dad trying to raise his kid.
Yeah. Well, there was in that era, through the '60s, there was a lot of political, I guess you'd say, ferment, and some of that was happening within what did they call it? The counterculture,
Hmm.
youth culture. Young people who were going to college and who were being exposed to a different way of thinking than they had been getting, just through their, their high school and through their parents and through the mainstream media. And some people were radicalized, and there was a lot of shit hitting the fan back then. And I think that to an extent, everybody was sort of politically naive and they didn't really have a complete understanding of the world. They were just coming at it with a great deal of idealism. And I can't imagine that kind of thing happening now. It seems like if anything, people are kind of jaded. But there are people who are politically naive and I would say even politically crazy
Yeah.
who are advocating for various kinds of things. And we mostly think about that happening currently on the right. You've got people on the far right that have had some really odd ideas for a long time, and now they have permission, to advocate in public in a very strong, in a very powerful way for those ideas, and that sort of wrote in with the fact that there was finally a president elected who was sympathetic to that kind of thinking, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump created I guess, a space for ideas that previously had been considered politically naive or maybe a little bit crazy, and by some people, evil, certain of those ideas. Especially there was sort of like, it's like a runway that goes into a kind of fascist kind of thinking. And we certainly have signs of just out and out fascism currently within the set of people who have clustered around Trump and the MAGA ideology, which is not the same as Republican ideology in the past. So these people are, there's people who call themselves Republicans, but they're not anything like the Republicans of our day.
Hmm.
And as much as we had issues with those people, we could have civil arguments with them about liberal thinking versus conservative thinking. But these people that we're seeing now on the right are not open to civil disagreement. They want to take it all, and they want to do away with pretty much all the fundamental. I'm thinking about Project 2025, for instance.
Yeah.
It wants to
The one
dismantle the so-called administrative state.
Yeah, the one that Donald Trump says he had nothing to do with putting that together, even though dozens and dozens of his staffers and close associates were deeply involved in putting that together. And the Republicans, have gone to the far right, but there's a group of them that have gone to the really far right. Marjorie Taylor Greene makes Sarah Palin look like a liberal. When you compare, you thought Palin was crazy. MTG is just a whole different kettle of rotten fish.
Trump said that he didn't know anything about Project 2025, but Kevin Roberts, who is one of the leaders of the Project 2025 coalition there's a bunch of people who are involved in putting that together. And he said the quiet part out loud. He said, well, Trump has to say that because it would be politically difficult if he said that he was connected with Project 2025. And incidentally, there's a movement to have the Heritage Foundation, which is where Project 2025 lives, to have their 501c3 status revoked because they are deeply involved in partisan politics now.
Yeah, they've been
And there's
involved
a
in a lot of
form that an IRS form. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of questionable financial transactions with the campaigns of various people, and that's become a subject of interest in the Department of Justice because there's some serious money being thrown around in this election on both sides. And I would imagine there'll be some fallout, when they actually investigate who did what and who gave what to who. And it's going to be interesting to see who was behind all this money that's flying around.
And beginning on TikTok, you had these people who were basically they're telling you what form to file with the IRS. And I don't have the form number in front of me, but there's an IRS form that you can file to complain about a 501c3. And I think there's like tons of those complaints being filed right now.
Hmm.
So the Heritage Foundation may actually be in shaky ground right now because they
One
have
would hope.
become so deeply involved in partisan politics.
Well, they've been responsible for a lot of bad stuff happening in the political arena and just in the country and at large. Yeah, they've gotten involved with a lot of ultra conservative causes over the years that it would have been nice to have avoided all of that, but they were right behind a lot of bad stuff that was coming out of the Republican Party mostly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a desire within that party to take us back to an earlier time. So when they say make America great again, they're thinking about a time when they thought America was great. But they the reason they think America was great at this time in the past, whenever it was, is they believe that we have given too many rights to too many people, that women don't know their place anymore. That's an interesting, I mean, I would think that women right now would be completely freaked out, and I'm sure many of them are, by what you're seeing in things like Project 2025. The idea being, a woman's place is in the home, she shouldn't be in the workplace, she shouldn't be in politics, she should just be making babies. That's a pretty scary, what is it, bit of reactionary
Yeah, the making babies thing
political thinking.
that works right into the whole great replacement theory. They want these women out there making babies so they won't be replaced by all these non-white and non-blonde folks that are coming into the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something to the thing of the birth rates are gone way down, and especially in the younger groups, millennials, Gen Z have a lot lower birth rate than the others.
Yeah, I got really quiet here for a minute because I was looking for something. There is a politician who was, in particular, was making some statements that were pretty reactionary, and I was hoping to find that, and I'm not finding it right now. But clearly the idea is to take us back to the time before the 1960s, to the way things were back then.
Yeah, and there are
And
some that want to go back to before the suffragette movement. They want to take the women's vote completely away, and that's not a small number of people. There's a lot of reactionary groups that really don't like having women, getting involved in their politics.
it's not a small number of people, but it's too small to actually have an effect. They have to figure out a way to take the power that they need to take. And the problem, I think, is so here's the way I see it, and have been seeing it for a while, and I've been thinking about this a lot. the last few days. I think Donald Trump was elected sort of by accident. There was a confluence of things that came together that helped him get the right number of votes in the right number of states, so that even though he didn't win the popular vote, he won the electoral college and he became president, right?
Hmm.
That kind of shouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
And
he
we
was
all,
surprised.
we know everybody thought at the time that that wasn't going to happen. And yeah, he was completely shocked that he won. And I think that, I think that the fact that he won then didn't really, it wasn't an indication that there was some huge sea change in the United States. I think that culturally and politically, the United States is still more progressive than not. And all of these things that have been happening, this like move to the right, I think is completely unaligned with the actual culture and society.
Yeah, how
I
much
think
do you
that
think?
that we have a minority of people who are pushing us in a direction where most people don't want to go. And we have seen since 2016 that those guys are not really winning elections very well. They're winning some, but they're not winning as many elections as they expected to win. And of course, in 2020, they didn't win the election. Now, there's a big fear that Donald Trump is going to win the 2024 election, especially after Biden's like debate meltdown. I don't believe it.
Hmm.
I don't believe that Donald Trump can get enough votes to win
Yeah, he
because I
scares
don't
a lot of
think
people
that,
still.
well, exactly. I don't think that people are lined up with him at all. And I think, one of the things that they're doing that they think they can kind of do, they think that they can go ahead and announce all the things they're going to do. And that's Project 2025, for instance, which is a frightening document if you're, if your alignment is with the United States as it's been progressing over the years. It's like this is it's gonna tear everything down, and things were working. There's no reason to tear them down. They were working. Now these people will argue they were not working because they didn't like the way things were working, but it was working pretty well for you and me and the middle classes and so forth.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I believe that
I just don't.
it's the mass media that's really caused the problem. That it's not so much the people of this country. Even this what used to be a kind of progressive media has become more confusing for people that actually shedding any light on politics. And I just don't listen to a lot of what's going on. Cable news has become a real nightmare because everybody seems to be just trying to buy into what the latest big uproar is about, and that's all you see. You don't hear anything about the rest of the nation, what news is happening there, what news is happening in the world. It's all that one subject that's be on 24/7.
Well, you're going just where I want to go with this, which
Mm-hmm.
is mass media. What's happening with mass media? Why is it that the New York Times has been so forceful in trying to push Joe Biden out of the presidential race?
Well,
And they've run they've run hundreds of stories and editorials where they complain about his age and they say that he should be leaving, and they interview people who say he should be leaving. Whatever, they're trying to make that case in a big way.
yeah,
And we talked to Jeff Jarvis recently, and he was talking about the transition that we're in as mass media begins to kind of come unglued and fall apart. And the New York Times, for instance, and so his thinking is, and I read something on Medium that he wrote just recently, and he's thinking the New York Times feels that they're losing power and they're losing influence, and all this shit that they're doing to try to force Biden out is they're really trying to show that they can make a difference and have an effect.
they're showing
But the
off.
fact is that since the debate, and with all this stuff the Times has been doing, and some other mainstream media have been doing, and now they've got some politicians that have got on board with them, and George Clooney, all these people are calling for Biden to resign. Biden's numbers are not going down; they're going up. And if you saw Biden in Michigan last night, the interesting thing to watch was not just Biden. He gave a really fiery speech. He was great. He had a great showing. Yeah, he was stumbling over words like he always does because he's got a speech impediment. But that's okay. I mean, who was it? King George, who stuttered quite a bit,
Oh, yeah.
but he was a very effective king. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that Biden should be king, incidentally. Don't twist my words there. But the point that I'm trying to make is that Biden is really not as diminished as they're making him out to be, but he does have, he has some issues, right? But these issues are not going to get in the way of his ability to effectively lead and govern. And incidentally, those people who were standing behind him last night and cheering him on were clearly in sync with that. They clearly love Joe Biden and they believe that he is the guy and they're behind him 100%. And I don't think that's just Michigan. I think that is widespread. And I think that all of the polls that we're seeing and all of the stories that we're seeing in news orgs like the Times, all this talk about how Joe Biden should get out of the race because of the debate, it's bullshit. It's not what ordinary people who are going to get out and vote are thinking. And in fact, I think that Trump thinks he's going to win by a landslide now because he thinks Biden is on the ropes. I don't see that. And I think that if Joe Biden continues to, among other things, embrace his speech impediment and embrace the fact that he was doing this last night. He says, well, sometimes I get words wrong and sometimes I have issues when I'm speaking. In effect, saying he's not the greatest public speaker, but he is the guy, he's the guy who can run the country.
Yeah, we need somebody who's not so much a public speaker and he's more of an administrator and person who gets things done.
Exactly.
You can talk about it all you want, but if you can't get the job done, then you're pretty much worthless.
Right, and the way that Biden wins, the way that he goes forward now, I think, is by getting out, getting in front of people, and speaking, even if he is stumbling over the words, and just going for it. This is what he did last night. He got some things, he misspoke some words. And what was it? There was another thing the other day where I think he referred to, I can't remember. He did some name switching.
Instead of Macron, he said Putin.
Yeah, something like that. So it's, a brain farts basically. And we know we all have had brain farts all our lives, and we know that they kind of get a little bit worse as you get older. But that doesn't mean that you're that diminished. I know that there's things that I don't do as well as I used to do. I know that, you can see here on the podcast, I will sometimes stop for a minute and have to think to get the word I need. And those things came to me a lot easier and quicker when I was younger. But I also think that I'm wiser and that I make better decisions now than ever before. And that I'm not really diminished to the extent that I am incapable of, for instance, like I could run a company right now. I don't really want to. I like being retired, or we're not really retired. We're speaking to millions of people through our podcast. Well, theoretically, we could.
I work harder now than I did when I wasn't retired, because I used to do software supervision for Kaiser Permanente, remotely from my office here in Bastrop County. And that was pretty easy, but I spent way more time working on our stuff simply because it really moves me. I enjoy what we do. And I
We're
kind
doing what we like to
of
do.
stuff, but it's nice just to be able to pursue the things you really love.
Incidentally,
Y'all,
I want to share this QR code. Uh, People will not be able to hear this over the podcast, but I will just tell you over the podcast that if you go to our website, you'll see ways to donate to the Plutopian News Network. We would like to get some contributions, either through PayPal or through Patreon, to help us with our expenses. We're not trying to make a ton of money doing this, and we're not at all greedy about it. But if you want to give us a few dollars, that would be great. If you're seeing this on YouTube and you see the QR code that I'm sharing, that QR code will give you a way to donate. Just wanted to throw that in.
come on down, kick our tires, and then give us some
Yeah,
money. And we won't call you about your warranty or any other things that we won't try to sell you a t-shirt, even though we'd love to, but just donate on PayPal and we won't bother you.
we
I
won't even.
I used to donate to campaigns and stuff, and I never could get them to stop sending me stuff that I didn't want to receive. It's like, yeah, well, you and I campaign, we're going to get this guy elected. I don't care about that guy. We're not those
Yeah,
kind
I mean, those campaigns are kind of all about the money, and
Yep.
I certainly will give some money to candidates that I care about. It is distressing to me that I have to put up with so much spam as a result, like political spam. Uh, but that's another subject. I don't know what to do about it. Have you noticed that if I mean, you can send the stop message to on a text. If you get a political text, somebody trying to raise money, they'll say you can send a stop, and they'll stop messaging you,
No,
and they'll stop messaging you through that channel, but you get messages through other channels.
yeah, because
I
one of my
can't seem
marketer
to.
friends said that that's their way of knowing that you're a good address. So they may not do the same thing, but you go on the list of real addresses that they can go and spam for other things.
That gives me a
Advertising
headache.
agencies are real good at that. They get that sucker list going. So no matter what you do, you could say, send me more, and they'll just keep on sending. But if you say stop, they'll send you some more stuff for something else.
I've thought about something else I want to mention. This is unrelated to what we've been talking about. Um, just to call attention to the fact that every Saturday we publish a little snippet. It's not very long, it's just a microblog length post, just a few characters. And it's called Plutopian News Network Sci-Fi Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I that's something that I do every Saturday. And initially, I was just kind of recalling science fiction films that I had seen, starting with some of those I saw in the 50s and kind of calling them out, ones that I thought were particularly good. But as it has evolved, I'm actually taking time to watch old science fiction movies so you don't have to, and summarizing them in a sentence or two and sending that out on the Sci-Fi Saturday. And one thing that I have discovered just recently, just within the last week or so, is that there are a lot of cheesy old science fiction movies that you can't find anywhere else that are published full length on YouTube. YouTube's loaded with those things, and some of them have been remastered, oddly enough. I mean, I found a remastered version of a movie that probably nobody even knows about just a couple of days ago, The 27th Day. Do you remember The 27th Day?
I don't think so. There's another place
It
to
was,
get these kind of things, and that's Pluto TV, which is a streaming service. They've got an all Godzilla channel that goes 24/7. And
oh, wow, Pluto TV?
yeah, and I downloaded their app, and I'll go in when I'm bored, and there's just some marvelous stuff there. You just have to look on their listing because their interface is a little rudimentary, but yeah, once you get used to it, you can go find really cool old stuff. And I'm a big fan of
It's not related to the
cheesy
Plutopian News
sci-fi.
Network, we should add.
No, no.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Spiritually, they probably are related simply because we appreciate the same things. But they
I'm
have
gonna look them up.
dedicated channels for various genres, and it's just marvelous.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
It's kind of like watching
Well,
creature features on late night TV when we were growing up.
we used to go to the kids show.
Oh, yes. Bring your Gandy's milk carton and you get in free on Saturday morning.
That's right.
And
In fact, that was the
I'm
only way
wondering
they
where her
let you
milk
in. You
went.
had, yeah, yeah. There was a lot of milk getting dumped back then, as I recall. We had to empty those milk cartons out. Um, I recall that you and I and a few other kids went together to see The Man from Planet X. Do you remember
Oh, yeah.
that?
That
The
was an
Man from
one.
Planet X was it was actually a pretty good movie. It was about an alien that had landed in I guess in the Moors. This was like in England or something.
Spooky stuff in England is always on a foggy moor. I don't know where
Right on.
it was a dark and stormy night. Oh, House on Haunted Hill. Wasn't that the one that had the in theater
Skeleton.
stealth? I loved that one. I went a couple of times just because it was so cheesy.
Well, it was a William Castle film. You remember William
Oh
Castle?
yes, oh yes.
So I wonder if I could find a picture of that skeleton. I guess I probably can't. What did they call that? Emergo or something like that. But the idea was that at a particular point in the film, a skeleton was supposed to be floating out in front of the people in the movie, and they would actually run this thing on a line above the studio, I mean, the theater audience. You would just kind of see this thing go over your head. And you know, it was cheesy, but it was kind of fun, you know.
Another
William Castle was always into fun stuff like that.
another cheese fest was the Tingler, which was supposed to they were supposed to wire some seats with a little low amperage
Yeah.
electricity and kind of give you a tingle. And I went and I didn't feel a thing. We a few people must have gotten charged seats.
You were in the wrong seat, dude.
Yep.
We figured it out. This was so Ritz Theater in Big Spring, which is where Scoop and I grew up. Um, and when I went to see the Tingler, we started kind of looking under the seats. Somebody had figured this out, and we're looking under the seats, and you could find the seats that had the thing on there. It was just as it was less than 50% of the seats that were wired. They weren't going to wire all the seats, so you could find a seat that had a Tingler planted in it and sit on it, which is what we were all doing.
Yeah. Well,
And the Tingler was
yeah, that's their
good.
purpose because if someone did get tingled, they would, jump up or shout out. So they basically scared all their neighbors. Everybody got a little thrill, even though it was only one person getting tingled.
I was a member of the William Castle fan club. He also produced The Tingler and The House on Haunted Hill and a bunch of other films. He directed quite a few films. I mean, if you look at his filmography, it's pretty huge. And every day we were supposed to start the day by saying, William Castle is the master of movie horror. And incidentally, he was the producer of Rosemary's Baby. That's
Mhm.
probably the biggest and most popular film that he was involved with.
And that
But he
was
did a
actually
bunch of
a
other
scary
ones.
movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It wasn't,
Probably his scariest movie.
yeah, and less cheesy, but very impactful on young folks anyway. Yeah, you could be giving birth to the devil's child.
And the filmmaker Joe Dante, who uh, was inspired quite a bit by people like William Castle and the people who made 50s like science fiction movies and that sort of thing. He made a film called Matinee in 1993.
Mhm.
It had John Goodman as a character who had come to Key West to screen a movie that he had made, and this character was based on William Castle. It
Oh,
was a
great.
guy who did like gimmicks, you know. So if you haven't seen Matinee, you absolutely should see it. It's a great take on that whole kind of madness back in the 50s. There was nobody quite like William Castle.
Yeah, I have a yearly tradition that at least once a year I will find it online and watch Plan 9 from Outer Space. One of the one of the great dramatic triumphs of never. But you get to see what is supposed to be Bela Lugosi, but which is really a double after I believe that was when he overdosed on heroin, wasn't it? And they had to bring in another actor to fill out the role.
Yeah, yeah, that was Ed Wood was the filmmaker there,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you know that there's a film called Ed Wood
Oh yeah.
that was made by Tim Burton, and Johnny Depp plays the part of Ed Wood in that particular film, and that thing is just great. Did you ever see Glenn or Glenda?
I I remember when it came out, but I don't know if I saw it. I can't remember it. I can't remember what I.
It was one of his films. It was a trans film basically. It was about a sex change. It's about it was about a transvestite. I don't know that he actually did a medical sex change in that film, but Ed Wood played the part himself. He played a transvestite, and Bela Lugosi was the narrator of the film. It's pretty interesting. I had never seen that film. Don Webb had a copy of it. Don Webb, the science fiction and horror writer author, brought that over to my house and showed it to me one time. Uh, that was when I had got a little bit overboard in really terrible old movies. I think I had been very influenced by MST3K,
Oh,
Mystery
absolutely.
Science Theater.
Yeah, that
And
was my religion back when it was on a regular basis, and I do
and
a
we were
lot of
talking
folks
about
that were into it.
YouTube. There is a steady stream of MST3K on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like 24/7.
Well, they have yeah, a new bunch that's doing it. They have a website where they stream new episodes, and
Oh, cool.
they go out and do a live show. They've done live shows for in real theaters. They've done that for quite some time. Just it's a sporadic thing where they go on tour and go to some big theaters and do the MST3K thing for a live audience. So you've got their instead of just the superimposed shadows, there's the real people and robots up there doing their stick. And I saw a video of one of those performances. It's pretty funny. It's a lot of improv going on there. So that was the great thing about that show is it was a lot of improv and a lot of interesting people that just kind of did cameos. So over the years, it showed some really great movies, but they had their own take on the movies. And so their soundtrack was usually way funnier than anything you could imagine.
I was thinking about what a Plutopian conversation this is, that we've gone from uh, really serious political issues to completely unserious fanboy raving about various bad movies that we're fond of.
Well, I think that's shows how we retain our sanity because there was a time when I was only into politics back when I was a street reporter. And that's all I did. And I nearly lost it. And I got saved by my publisher at Zodiac News Service, who just, he knew I was going to come unwound. And he made me music editor. And it was great. I got to go to every big tour, every big show, and interview cool people. And my mental health improved dramatically because I wasn't constantly plugged in to the political machine. That can do damage to you, really.
Well, and that's worth mentioning, and this is a public service announcement, I guess. If you are watching more than an hour of some political channel like MSNBC or Fox News or CNN, where they, I mean, these are channels that are really not news channels. They're about politics, and they talk about politics constantly,
They
constantly.
have
And
agendas.
yeah, they give you a chance to take a propaganda at things. It's a
Yep.
bunch of
Yep.
propaganda. Anyway, if you're spending more than an hour watching one of those things every day or two, then that's too much, and you should stop and you should back off.
Yeah. And, even though we are on social media in many ways, you should unplug from that too, because I've been weaning myself from some of the things I was doing just because I was bored, and I'm doom scrolling forever. And after a while, you just realize, why are you doing this? And I've unplugged from a lot of that stuff. And I feel a lot lighter. Just my whole being is a little lighter from giving up the endless doom scrolling through social media and seeing horrifying things nonstop. It's nice to just go out and get a breath of fresh air and walk among trees, which I do because I have a lot of trees around me. That can really restore your soul.
And I can plug the idea of online community too, because it's different from social media. Uh, it's not so drive by, and you're not like hit from all directions by a bazillion different people. I am a member of the Well, Whole Earth Electronic Link, which has been around since 1985, so it's been there for quite a while. And some of the people we've interviewed have been members of the Well, and we've talked about it a little bit with them. The Well is an online community. It's not a place where people just kind of drop in and post a snippet here and a snippet there, and it's not a place where people um, post memes and things like that. It's a place where people have actual conversations, and they build history with each other. You come to know the other people who are there, and it has a really different. There's a different sense to it. Now, there are places on the Well where if you spend a lot of time there, it could you could get a little twisted there too, because um, any place you go where everything is about politics and fear, which is a big part of politics right now, you can become unhinged. But I kind of recommend that people find places where they can have conversations versus just being exposed to like drive-by opinions.
Yeah, I have a nice iPad that I use a lot carrying around me, and it has a function that scared me the other day because it pops up and tells you how long you were online yesterday, and it said 7 hours. I went, what? Wait, I got thinking, it's like, you idiot. What? That's 7 hours that you could have been doing something, you know, do the laundry for God's sake. Don't just do 7 hours. So that was a real wake up call. It's like I'd been slipping in my staying off of social media, I guess. So I'm going to be doing a lot more laundry and housework. I think that at least has, an outcome that is beneficial to the family.
Did
Whoa.
you hear that?
Yeah. Was that thunder?
Thunder.
Oh, well, we had some
It
earlier.
was a clap of thunder.
Hell,
I didn't know it was going to rain
go to
today.
Austin and get
I'm
the
looking out the window. I don't see any rain falling yet. Huh?
I said, go to Austin and get the clap. But seriously,
Oh yeah, it was a peal, 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 a peal of thunder.
well,
I'm looking outside to see where that came from, and it is kind of cloudy out there.
yeah, I was looking at weather
It's
live and shows there's a lot of little pop-up cells coming through. I think it's not sure what it's a result of, but there's nothing really big, but there's scattered thunder showers around.
we can use it. We
Yep.
certainly need all the water we can get.
Well, poor Houston, on the other hand, could not use any more water. But unfortunately, they've been getting rained on today, and that's just terrible. That's one town that was definitely, no, it's town, city that was built in the wrong location. Because
Well,
every
they were
storm,
slammed by Hurricane Beryl the other day.
yeah,
Is it Beryl?
yeah,
And of course, you and I were affected by that too because our Spectrum internet service was out for 7 hours.
so that was gangs of
That's a
fun.
long time to be. There were people here that were freaking out. I walked out and saw one of my neighbors just standing out in the street. Uh, she had her phone. She was holding her phone up. I guess she was taking a picture of something. But she said, I don't know what to do with myself."
Yeah, it's funny. I've gone on to my rants about analog media. Uh, And I had a great time because I couldn't rely on the TV or the internet, so I went and grabbed nice DVDs that I have. I got to play with. Oh, here. Let me get the alternate camera here and show you what else I did. And over here, if I, if I
It's a little shaky.
now I've got
There you go.
my reel-to-reel professional reel-to-reel multi-track recorder, and I sent it off to New York and got that fixed because it had a number of problems and it just needed to be modernized for the tape recording. Reel-to-reel tape recorders have become a big deal in certain areas. Yeah, there's a lot of uh, groups on Facebook totally devoted to people that actually collect them. They're like comic book collectors, and I hate those people because I believe that those recorders can actually. There's a lot of musicians who love them still. Here in Austin, there's some studios that still have their, reel-to-reel recorders. The smaller ones like 8 tracks, but also 24 track. Multi-track recorders, and a lot of people really like it because it has a special sound, and you can incorporate
Huh.
digital recording and the tape, the analog recording, and come out with a really good product. And
Do you have a lot of old tapes?
pardon?
Do you have a lot of old tapes? Real tapes that you can play?
Let me give you an idea. There's there's just a few of them. My studio is a mess because I've been going.
They're in the box.
Yeah, all these boxes here are reels of tape. Plus, I've got more that. Let me switch back off.
We used to be able to buy like commercial recordings on reel to reel tape. Do you have some of those from back in the old days, like Enoch Light and the Light Brigade,
Yeah, I
Al Kayola?
think the only one I have actually is Janis Joplin, her last,
Oh,
and it was really nice. And I haven't played it in years, but I've got a lot of stuff. I've recordings of my early jazz shows that I did on our local radio station, KBST in Big Spring, and I I did an 11 to midnight show every night, and I have some recordings of that. I was surprised at how well it's all mono because AM radio was monophonic. There was no stereo
yeah.
at that time, And it's some of the stuff sounded really good in mono, because a lot of them were originally mixed that way anyway. Stereo
Cool.
recordings, really were a rarity, in the early 60s, and
I remember.
a lot of stuff you get that's old stuff that's been rechanneled into stereo, kind of shaky in quality. Some of them did a good job, and some of them were just awful. But
Did I ever tell you about my first exposure to stereo?
no,
I may not have. So, and this involves KBST because the television station, which was KWAB, I think it was KWAB then, didn't they? They had a change somewhere in there, but the television station and the radio station decided to do this simulcast where the television station would have one channel of a stereo feed, and the radio station would feed the other channel. So if you set up your radio near the television set, you could get stereo, and the performance was by Ben Hall and the Circle 4 Ramblers.
Mhm.
A lot of people may not have heard of them. They were pretty much local to Big Spring, though. One of the members of that band, Weldon Myrick, who played steel guitar, went on to Nashville and became pretty famous as a steel guitar player. But that was the first stereo I think I ever heard, was just setting that thing up and listening to it.
Yeah, we had a FM station.
That was 100 years ago.
Yeah, well, there was an FM station in Big Spring, and I actually knew a guy who worked there. His voice was never heard except for like an occasional announcement, but it was all automated, and I can't remember. I think it ended up becoming KHEM FM when the country station bought out the FM thing, and it was country FM for a while. I think they went to rock and roll later on. But I got a tuner installed on my shortwave radio, which was kind of a stupid thing to do, but I was young and dumb. But it allowed me to pick up that station, and I found out that I could plug it into my parents' stereo console, and you could get stereo FM, and that was pretty amazing. I'd listen to it
Cool.
on headphones because it was a big experience. And when the albums came out, I got to listen to the Beatles' early albums in stereo, and that they really didn't have a handle on stereo at that time because they had the vocals in one channel and the instruments in another, and listening to it
I remember that.
really disconcerting. It wasn't quite so bad if you were just listening it on speakers, but on headphones it was confusing.
And there were albums that were recorded in mono that were released as electronically rechanneled for stereo. You remember that?
Yeah, sometimes it worked, but often it was pretty lame.
It didn't sound very good. No. Yeah, those were the days.
Well, that's the same
Yeah,
thing.
when we first started getting full stereo, I think the first people to really make effective use of full stereo was the Beatles.
Yeah.
Something like Sergeant Pepper's,
And what's a shame is their early CDs that were released by Capitol were just horrible because they had no idea how they went about digitizing the stuff off the analog master tapes, which were really
Yeah.
amazing sound. And it came out on the CD. It was like, I got one and I just used it as a drink coaster because it was worthless. I went and put on the vinyl album if I wanted to listen to that. But yeah, they finally figured that out. But the early CD releases where they were just porting it over from the master tape were just horrible.
I'm looking at the clock. I think we have reached the end of our hour.
According to the old clock on the wall, it's time for us to
Yeah.
waddle along.
I think this has been a pretty good episode here.
Yeah, let's just hope that the listeners feel the same. If not, let us know.
Yeah.
Talk about your subject. Give us a subject. We've been known to just
Yeah, absolutely. If you have anything that you want two inarticulate old guys to talk about, just let us know.
They're your guys. Come on down. We'll waddle and babble away.
One of these days, we're going to have to talk about UFOs, the aesthetics of unidentified flying objects. You can't call them that anymore. It's supposed to be UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena.
I'm sorry, it's it's UFOs all the way for me.
Right on. Why should we change? Okay, well, this is it. Thank you so much. This has been a great talk.
Thank you, John.
I will see you in a few days.
Alrighty. Thanks, folks. You can follow the Plutopia News Network at plutopia.io. On Facebook, go to @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. With John Lepkowski, I'm Scoop Sweeney. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.